All right, so let's talk about the NFL at the quarter mark of the year. We're 4 weeks through. So, most teams have played their 4 games. A couple teams, Bucks, Dolphins, have only played three. We will have bye weeks in week 5, so there will be some teams that we haven't buys this week. Um, but as we talk about, just after the first month of the season, talking about, kind of each team where they're at. Let's talk about the AFC East first. So surprise team here, the Bills. I had the Bills going like 4-12, 5-11. I had the Bills not very good at the first of the year. 3-1. Their defense has looked a lot better than it has in the past. Rex Ryan was also always known for his defense and that he's going to really bring up good defense. Well, he never really brought that to Buffalo when he left the Jets. But I will say Sean McDermott's done a great job of bringing that back. Like I said in my Week 5 preview video, LaShawn McCoy has been all right. He's gained a good amount of yards. He's caught a good amount of passes, but he hadn't scored any touchdowns. He hadn't really broke anything big. So to think in your first 4 games, you hadn't had LaShawn McCoy have one of his awesome games, and you're still 4-1. Your defense looked really well. Last week you gave up 17 points. That was one more. That was the most points you've given up all year, 17. So once I look at the tallies, we're looking at 12 week 1, 6 week 2, or 3 week 2, 12, 9. Last week they gave up 16, and then this week they gave up 17. They're looking pretty good. I think they're going to give the Patriots a little bit of attention this year with how the Patriots are playing. I think the Patriot-Bills games could be pretty good games, games that are a little bit underrated that we didn't think of. I think Jets are going to kind of fall back to this pack. They're a team I wasn't high on at first. They've had some pretty good weeks, a couple good weeks here. 2-2, can't write them off. Playing Browns this week, so you can't write them off yet. But I don't think they're going to finish above Buffalo or New England. Miami has not looked good. Jay Cutler, as the year goes on, it looks like he's getting more and more frustrated. 2 weeks in a row of just not scoring a lot of points. There's only so much their defense can do. Their defense hadn't played bad, but if the offense can't do anything, it's going to be really tough. I think Cutler's for sure going to keep throwing it to Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry is going to get his, but if Ajay never gets going, I think that's going to be the real problem for Miami. Miami really needs to find a back. If Ajay's not going to be the guy, Ajay has not looked good this year thus far. When you talk about Ajay. He was a top fantasy back at the first of the year, and he's not looking like it like he was last year. Steelers, let's talk about Steelers. Steelers could be 4-0 right now. They played now I will say Big Ben has just not looked as into it as he usually looks. Now he never looks like he's into it, but he seems a little bit more disengaged this year. Maybe he's lost a step. Maybe he's digressing a little bit earlier than the guys like Breeze and Brady and Manning. Maybe he's finally hitting his end because he doesn't look like he has a lot of energy. He doesn't, they're not really killing it down the field. He's not really making big throws down the field right now. And maybe as the year goes on, he'll get better, but it's a lot of running Le'Veon, a lot of short passes to Bell. The one thing I will say, their defense has looked a lot better. They have one of the top defenses in the league, top fantasy defenses also. So the defense is helping make it that they don't have to do as much, but I feel like if Pittsburgh, there's been a last couple of years, Pittsburgh kind of lost their defense, and their offense had to really step up and really had to play in these games, and they've been doing it. And I don't know if this Pittsburgh team can do that this year. Their offense just hasn't looked that explosive with all the weapons that they have, so we'll see. Baltimore's 2-2. They had their first 2 games of the year against Cincinnati and Cleveland, passed with flying colors. They played the Jags and the Steelers the last 2 weeks, and they have failed with flying colors. So we don't really know much about Baltimore. They look like your typical 6-10 to 8-10 or 8-8 team. So we'll see what happens out of them. They really got to figure out the offense. Number one receiver, they need a new number one receiver. That's going to be something, maybe not a new, but I think they need a new receiver. I don't like their receiving core. Running backs, hopefully they get Woodhead back soon. They throw a different running back every week. Last week it was Alex Collins. The week before that, Jarvis Allen. The week before that, Terrence West. The week before that, it was Woodhead. So you don't ever know what's really going with these motherfuckers. But we'll see what happens. Defense is good. Their defense will keep them in some games, and they'll be able to come back and win those. Bengals, I'm not sold on the Bengals. The Bengals, they ran over the Browns. So we'll see what's going forward. Big game for them against the Bills this next week. Hopefully, if they can, kind of get the wheels rolling, this will be a kind of momentum. The Bills look good this year. It's not a game I see the Bengals winning, though. Browns have looked atrocious. Don't know how to use Crowell. I don't like the Browns. Browns look like they're going to get the first pick in next year's draft. If I was betting today, Jacksonville's 2-2, and they are ahead of the South Division. They're tied with Houston and Tennessee. Tennessee is the favorite. Tennessee has had somewhat of a tough schedule with Raiders and Seahawks, but they did beat the Seahawks, lost to the Raiders. And then the other 2 weeks, they beat the Jags, and then they lost to the Texans this week. So, they're kind of Jekyll and Hyde-ish. They play good sometimes. They play bad sometimes, and Houston just jumped on them this week. Houston started 0-2. They've won, they started 0-1, went 1-1, then lost last week, and then won this week. So 2-2. I think Houston definitely could be a team to give the Titans some issues this year. I think Jags will start to fall back to the pack. And then Colts, with the fact that they don't have Luck and Luck not coming back till week 6. Hopefully, I'm going to give the Colts a chance if Luck comes back and their record isn't completely destroyed, because it doesn't look like Tennessee or Houston's really going to jump out and get a nice lead to start the year. So I'm not going to count them off when Luck comes back. I think the Colts are just as good as these other 3 teams in the AFC South once they get Luck back. So this division is really a toss-up. But I'm going with Texans as my favorite right now. I don't know what it is. I really like what I've seen out of Deshaun Watson. I want to go out on a limb. Everybody's real happy about the Titans. Really think Titans are going to beat it. I hadn't really been that impressed with the Titans. Titans look a lot like the teams I've seen them in the past. They're predecessed by Mariota. So we'll see what happens. I like Houston in this division if Luck doesn't come back and run that division. AFC West, Kansas City's done a great job to get out to this 4-0 lead. I think it's going to be very vital for them. We've seen teams start hot in the past. We've seen where the Vikings started 7-0 last year. So let's not get too excited about a 4-0 team yet. I think the bigger deal about this 4-0 start in a tough division is really going to help you at the end of the year. We had Oakland kind of as the favorite, and, Oakland's lost 2 in a row. Carr's going to be out for a couple weeks most likely. So in the I'd say Oakland's been all right to this point. They're below average. I would say I would have thought they'd be 3-1 at this point in the season. So they're a little bit finishing a below average. Marshawn Lynch has been kind of non-existent the last 2 weeks. We hadn't really seen a whole lot of him. I know they did play Denver this week, so that was tough. But we're really going to have to establish Lynch in the near future with Carr out. I think he'll be a real feature. And the thing is about this division, you're playing a pace game because Denver's 3-1. If Denver plays on the road, they're not that great. So those games, are a little bit easier to bank on. And then you got the Chargers at 0-4. But you got to play the Chargers twice, and the Chargers are going to give you hell. And they still hadn't played the Chargers, so we'll see when they play the Chargers how that goes. But Oakland was a preseason favorite of mine for the AFC West with Kansas City as the wild card. Kansas City is looking like the front runner, and then Oakland's right there. I'm not as completely sold on Denver yet. 3-1, really good defense. Offense hasn't been bad, but we could see 2 wild card teams out of this division, so don't be surprised because the other divisions really aren't looking that strong. So at this point in the year, a month in, I'm liking Kansas City. I'm liking Denver. I'm liking Oakland. I'm liking Houston or Tennessee to represent the AFC South. I like Pittsburgh for sure in the North. That was a preseason pick, so that one's the same. I'll continue to take New England in the East, but I'll take Buffalo as a surprise wildcard team. They're going to be creeping on Denver and the Raiders at the end of the year, I feel like, and they do have the tiebreaker over Denver since they beat Denver last week. So let's watch how the AFC pans out. So let's talk about the NFC a little bit. So Dallas is 2-2. Washington's 2-2. Washington to me is the best 2-2 team. Well, I won't say they're the best 2-2 team as in talent-wise. I think Seattle's maybe a little bit better than Washington. And, Dallas is 2-2, so Dallas is another team that is considered pretty good. Oakland, another 2-2 team. Tennessee, another 2-2 team. And then New England, another 2-2 team. So there's a good amount of 2-2 teams. But out of the 2-2 teams, I've been really impressed with Washington. Their defense has been very, very very good. I've really liked what I've seen out of their defense. And their offense, Kirk Cousins is doing just enough to get it done. He hasn't really got that chemistry down with his wide receivers yet. But I think if Washington, as the year goes on, as they are able to get Rob Kelly healthy, as they're able to establish this pass game a little bit more, I think Washington's going to be a team to be reckoned with. I think Eagles going to start fast. I think this is pretty normal. Eagles like to start fast, and I think as the season catches up with them, they'll continue to fold, and they'll be back right there at the back of the pack at like 6-10, 7-9 at the end of the year. Giants, I think Giants are going to be, and the thing is about the Eagles, there's a lot of hype around the Eagles. The Eagles have a lot of fans, so like you get a lot of like messages, and you get a lot of like hype from Eagle fans, or like that, Eagles are going to be good this year. I'm not sold on it yet. They've looked pretty good in their first couple of games, but all their games have been pretty close. They barely beat the Chargers. They barely beat the Giants. Those are both 0-4 teams. And they beat the Redskins, but I feel like they beat the Redskins because the Redskins didn't come to play week 1. So we'll see what goes on with Philadelphia going forward. I do see them winning this week against the Cardinals. That would be good. Dallas has been somewhat of a surprise. They do have Zeke, and they're still 2-2 in their first 2 games. Now, Denver shut them down. Denver killed them. But the Rams really surprised them last week. And, their 2 wins that they have really hadn't been that impressive. Giants, who the Giants haven't been good at all, and they didn't score any points. And then they beat the Cardinals. The Cardinals hadn't been good at all, and that was honestly a game until the fourth quarter. Even into the fourth quarter, that could be considered a game. So I'm gonna still take Dallas as my favorite for the East. Washington's going to be a close second, I'll say, and then Eagles, Giants are going to be battling out for that bottom spot. Even though their records are completely different, even though Eagles are 3-1 and the Giants are 0-4, I still think at the end of the year these teams are going to have similar records. So let's talk about the NFC North. Detroit, I think for sure Detroit is the surprise team of the year. Like I just said, the Eagles are 3-1, but I'm not that impressed by them. The Lions are 3-1, and I'm very impressed by them. They should be 4-0. They got a win taken away from them last week against the Falcons. They should have won that game. And then this week they played Minnesota, and they, outdueled them on the defense and created a good amount of turnovers. I've been talking about, picking up Lions defense fantasy-wise. If you're picking them up, it's looking good. They've been putting up a good amount of points each week. And the thing is, it's Detroit though. Detroit is going to fold to Green Bay. They always fold to Green Bay. So the best bet for Detroit, I'll say this, Detroit starts really hot every year. They've been starting pretty hot every year the last couple of years. So let's not get too excited. They're gonna start to fold later, like they did last year when they let the Packers come back and jump them. But I will say the Lions have put themselves in a good position in the NFC to really be looking at a wild card spot / division winner type. Now Green Bay's 3-1. They've been dealing with injuries all year. Green Bay is that team that I think is definitely going to be a representative as a 1 or 2 seed for the NFC at the end of the year. I think they'll continue to play good. I think Rodgers just gets it done. So I think that they definitely finish above Detroit. Now Minnesota is going to be right there with the Lions. A tough loss this last week to the Lions. It was a close game throughout. I think Minnesota is going to have a pretty good team this year with their defense. Dalvin Cook, that injury is going to really throw a wrench in their season. If the running game can't get going after this week, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough on their season. But I feel like they're going to be pretty good this year. They had no Adrian Peterson last year, and they were still able to be all right. And I think they're gonna be fighting for a wild card spot, just like the Lions this year. I see both of them battling it out throughout the year. Chicago, they brought Trubisky in. I think this is definitely a sign that we're ready to get Trubisky ready for the future. So we're definitely getting Trubisky ready. We'll see what happens. I think this first week's going to be tough on him, but I think moving forward he'll have some better games. And then I think Chicago's a team that we're going to be talking about 2 years from now. If they can keep their running backs the way they have it, if they can build their offense, their defensive line, they need to build their defense in the draft this next year. But they've got their quarterback that they like, and hopefully he'll pan out. So let's talk about The NFC South, Carolina and Atlanta are both 3-1. Both have been impressive this year. Carolina's been impressive because Newton hasn't really had the help that he's needed. He never really does have the help, but, Olsen, his favorite receiver's out, and then his second favorite receiver, Benjamin, was out last week. We didn't know how long Benjamin was going to be out. Benjamin played. Benjamin had a good game. He threw 2 TDs to Funches. Let's not get into that they just beat the Patriots. Let's get into it more that the Patriots don't look like the team that they are. Carolina's looked good so far. Their defense has played very well. Not so much this last week, but they gave up only 3 points to the Bills. I think 2 weeks before that. And then last week they played the Saints, lost to the Saints in a tough game. That was a game where the Saints just jumped on them, though. And then they got to play 49ers week 1, which they won. So, not too crazy about the teams that they've beaten so far. But 3-1 is a good record, to have with the injuries that they've dealt with. I like where Carolina's at this point in the year. And then Atlanta struggled at times this year. They struggled week 1 against the Bears. They played very good against the Packers week 2, won that, and then they should have lost last week to the Falcons or to the Lions, but the refs saved them on that, and then they lost to the Bills this week. So a loss was coming for them. A loss was definitely coming. They've got a bye week this week. Hopefully they get Julio Jones healthy. Hopefully Matt Ryan can get in there, watch some film, get some shit going, get it going the right way. He's been throwing too many picks lately. And then they play the Dolphins week 6, so they should be able to jump on the Dolphins and really handle them. A big game for them. And then Tampa Bay is 2-1. Tampa Bay they played really good week 2, I guess it was, since they didn't play week 1. And then they got slaughtered by the Vikings last week. Vikings defense jumped all over them. And then they were able to win a shootout with the Giants. Real tough game. This is a game that I wouldn't expect Tampa Bay to win. An 0-3 Giants team that really needs to win. A 1-1 Tampa Bay team that they would like to win, but they don't necessarily need it as much. This was a big game for them. They won it. Winston was good late. He was able to drive them down the field to get the TD late in the game to get it. He's really jumping into that. He's really crossing over that line of, am I a pretender or a real quarterback? He's really trying to get into that zone. And we'll see this next Thursday against the Patriots how that is going forward. I think the Bucs are definitely a playoff team, one of those teams that's going to be fighting with the Vikings, with the Lions, with the Panthers. If the Panthers don't win the South, I think those are all teams that are fighting. Redskins, another team that's going to be fighting for a spot that I didn't mention. Rams, so let's go NFC West. Rams 3-1. I said a little bit earlier that, they beat the 49ers, they beat the Colts. This win against the Cowboys is their best win so far. Their other 2 teams that they played are combined 1-7. And then, they lost to, who they lose to? They lost to the Redskins by a touchdown. Redskins have looked good this year, and that was a game that they actually played pretty good in. That they didn't play terrible in. Seahawks are 2-2. Seahawks didn't look great. First 2-3 weeks of the season, but they really started to pick it up in the second half of that game against the Titans. Doug Baldwin's looked good. They did lose Chris Carson this last week. He looks like he's done for the year, so they're going to have to refigure out that running back position. Is it going to be Lacey? Is it going to be Rawls? I really think they should go with C.J. Prosite. I think Prosite should be the guy, and I think they should throw in some J.D. McKissick. J.D. McKissick had a good game. I think he could be someone that could be good for them going forward. Defense looked a lot better this game. They did play the Colts. Let's remember that. Defense is not what it was. I've mentioned that in the past, and I do still think Seattle is the front runner for this division. Atlanta, Arizona with the loss to David Johnson, it's just going to be tough. Their offense is one-dimensional now. Their running game is not good. He's not Palmer was able to check down to Johnson a lot. He's not really able to check down like he was. 49ers look pretty bad. 49ers just can't win the games. They've been in a couple of close games. Lost to 3 to the Cardinals, lost by 2 to the Rams, lost by 3 to the Seahawks. They did get slaughtered by the Panthers, but those are all close games to their division teams. They're 0-4. They're going to get it. They're going to get a win eventually. It's tough. It's been tough for them, but I did say that I think the 49ers are going to give some teams a little bit more trouble. I think, I knew Shanahan was playing pretty tough. Team I did forget to mention in the NFC South was the New Orleans Saints. They're 2-2. Breeze, pretty good quarterback there. And they've won 2 weeks in a row. They lost the first 2 weeks. Tough game against the Vikings, and then a tough game against the Patriots. Patriots were really hungry that game after their 0-1 start. Vikings, Sam Bradford was like this quarterback we've never seen before, week 1. So 2 tough games, and then they beat the Panthers last week and the Dolphins this week. So they're back to 500. They got the Lions coming up 2 weeks from now. They got a bye week right now. They need to figure out their running game right now. And not to say that their running game is bad, but you got Adrian Peterson in your backfield. You're not using him. They need to get away. They need to figure out a way to incorporate him in the offense. Alvin Kamara has looked good. Mark Ingram is like their number one back. I see him out there more than not. I think they really need to figure out that running back position. But I don't see them being a team in that division to really make some noise. They're going to win a couple games against Tampa Bay. They already beat the Panthers once. They're going to make a little bit of noise. Their record is going to help them out. They're going to hurt a couple of those teams in the South, but I don't see them making that much noise. So talking about the NFC, I got Dallas as my favorite of the East. I got Green Bay as my favorite of the North. Atlanta's still my favorite of the South, and I'll go Seattle as my favorite of the West. That's pretty preseason, not a lot of change. But wild card teams, I'm gonna say I like the Panthers as a wild card team right now. I like the Lions as a wild card team right now. I like the Redskins as a wild card team. Those are some wild card teams that I could see at the end of the year really making some noise. Some other teams just to watch out for. They got hot starts, or the Eagles and the Rams both 3-1, and they could be a team that with the way their hot start is, they could make a little bit of, they could continue to keep their name in the race at the end of the year. And then don't forget about the Vikings. They're 2-2, and once they get Bradford back, we'll see how that goes. Tampa Bay is a surprise. It could be a surprise team this year, so watch them. But yeah, it's been a pretty good season so far. The football, some surprises and some, but I think the biggest surprises thus far this year is definitely the Chargers and the Giants, both being 0-4. They both play this week. I didn't really elaborate on the Chargers too much. The only thing I got to say about the Chargers, though, is that, it sucks, man. They've lost a good amount of close games. They've basically been in almost every one of their games, and they just barely lose them. They lose by 7-10 or 3 once a year. They lost by 2 last week. They lost by 10 the week before that, 2 the week before that, 3 the week before that. So they've had some really close games. They've been right in these games. They just hadn't been able to win them. And that's kind of the same for the Giants. The Giants have had close games. It's like these two teams have just been really unlucky. So I wouldn't be surprised if these teams could turn it around. But at the same time, I'm not gonna think anything crazy is going to happen out of the Giants. I don't think the Giants are just in too tough of a division to really get out of that 0-4 hole.